afternoon. I think lunch is a bit heavier or something. She was, I think, she has to announce twice saying that are we all back off or we have gone to a sleep mode kind of a scenario. But thank you very much, Observe Now, for having me here. I must thank the entire team and the sponsor for having me here. I think today what we will focus is about how do we think of a data, how do you define data when especially public sectors at large or government at large when we are looking into data. What should be our approach to security and privacy at large, right? Now let me ask to all of you saying that if I say that in terms of whether public sector or private sectors, I think you might be aware that, or if I ask, do you really know that how many percentage of organizations they suffer because of the data silos or the kind of data visibility you do not have? And it's a thumping percentage, 58% of organizations, they suffer because of the data silos, because of the data visibility which they do not have, otherwise they should have. Just imagine 58% of organizations. And I am not differentiating between a public sector or private sector, it's across the organizations. Let me ask another data points from all of you, saying that how many of us we believe that my business suffers or I am not able to meet my business objectives or service objectives when we deal with the government organizations. How many of us we believe, or CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, or organizations at large, they believe, again there is a thumping majority, they say around 58 to 56% of us, we believe that if you do not understand data, if you do not know how to govern the data, that means I am not meeting my business objective or the service objective or the impact I am looking to have from that particular business or organization at large, or for an example, we are in government, we are dealing with the citizens, right? So that is another thumping percentage. And the another beauty or other essence of the data is how do we wastage the resources in terms of manpowers, in terms of hardware, software, plethora of technology, and that percentage is again a thumping majority, around 45 to 50%. The data proves that we completely waste our manpower in terms of resources, in terms of hardware, software, whatever you think about. Now, if I gave these three kind of examples or three kind of data points to start with, then let me little drive through now when I'm looking for a kind of a data security, data privacy concerns, data governance concerns. I must start with saying that when we are dealing with data, the first and foremost very important is identify your data source. Where is this data coming from? Is it your internal data? Is it your external data? Is it a data hitting through some cyberspace or social media? Do we really understand our data source? And again, if you ask my own experience, I think when I was with Reserve Bank of India, public sectors, Ministry of IT, and now with external affairs, I think it's hard time for all of us it took a hard time to understand even for our data source, where is it coming from, what is the route it is taking, what is the route it is now getting delivered. So unless you understand your data source, it is very difficult, believe me, to govern that data, right? And then once you understand your data sets, then you define your workload. What kind of workload are you dealing? Is it a fiduciary workload? Is it a kind of a PII kind of a data? Is it a configurable data? Is it a citizen's data? So then you need to define your workload. And accordingly, once you define your workload, then you strategize your kind of the execution model in terms of whether you will deal with it on-prem, whether you will deal with a cloud way of approaching the data. But unless you classify, unless you define your workload, and believe me, sitting here in this room, I can visualize my workload across not only in India, but across my global embassies and consulate, because that is the way I have defined my workload, that is the way I have approach to technology, that is the way I have defined my processes and compliances, and that is the way probably I am accessing and authorizing based on various set of users. Whether it is my internal users, it is my external users, it is public at large. So very important is to understand your workload. So once you identify your data source, go to identify your workload, and then once you identify your data source and workload, the third steps of the data is how do you govern it. And when you are governing the data, those 5 V's, do not forget those 5 V's. And these 5 V's are nothing but the kind of volume you are dealing, the kind of the value you are trying to extract from the data, the kind of noise that data is carrying, that we call veracity of the data, the kind of types the data you are dealing in terms of, maybe it's a kind of a JPEG data, it's a PII data, it's a voice data, it's a video data, and the kind of the variability of the data. The variability of the data has become too much of an importance today, because the idea is, and especially in the government, what we are more and more thinking, saying that wherever you are, whichever part of the corner you are, whichever devices you are trying to access that data, anytime, anywhere, 24/7, if I want to deliver that services, the variability of the data makes so important for me, because I want to deliver services closer to the people. I want to deliver services wherever you are. I want to deliver services 24/7, anytime, anywhere, any device kind of a scenario. Let me also add 2 more things here. Today, after the COVID, the scenario has completely undergone a change. And 2 most important factors, that is mobility of workforce and the mobility of workspace. It's a reality of the life. Today there is no boundary, there is no boundary. It's complete boundaryless when we talk about the data at large, right? And if that is the case, I think the DPDP Act now in place, let me now little more differ from here, saying that when you are mapping these data sets or mapping these data points in terms of processes, in terms of technology, and in terms of the owner of the data, principal owner of the data at one side, who will actually give you the consent while you will deal with that data sets, and taking that consents again where we kind of go wrong, or where we misled by saying that when you are taking a consent from the principal owner of the data, please understand that the consent given by the principal owner of the data is actually an explicit consent. It is a freely available consent given to you, or is it a consent given for a specific purpose? If you do not understand that, going forward you are going to go wrong when you are dealing as part of a fiduciary of the data, which you are collecting, storing, and using for various purposes. Since now I think time is short, at the end I must say that DPDP in place, once you understand the data right at the source, divide it, classify it, categorize it, understand those 5 V, categorize into 5 Ws, that is workload, workforce, workflow, web, and one more is workplace, right? And then try to define your entire data security and privacy framework, keeping in view these compliances. Today it is DPDP, tomorrow some more law of the land may come. I think things become easier, look simpler. I am doing that. I am comfortable doing that. And things become much more easier when you look into the data privacy and security concerns. So that's how I end it. And thank you. Thank you so much.